Okay, so welcome to this little video. I'm gonna go over a bit of the things that I wanna talk about in Enlisted. I'm gonna just get into the nitty gritty of everything right away because I don't like to sugarcoat things like other YouTubers and streamers does. And well, I'm gonna greet you and I'm gonna say thank you for watching. But to be starting this video off, I want to talk about the things that has just been totalitarian for Enlisted in its whole for a very long time now, and I think a lot of things that Enlisted needs to do are just basically revamping the whole game at this point, because we have reached the point in Enlisted where we have almost turned the entire game upside down with virtually no positives that has happened, while at the same time we have also not really had enough things happening where it could make a successive impact on the game. And I think a few footnotes for Enlisted devs to do should be noted down right now. So the first thing I really want to go over, that I think it's obvious with what has happened as of late, it's Leadstorm. This event we have had was a complete mismatch with the entire community in its whole almost. We played this event, and I have played this event, and it had a very bad reception when it came in, and I think it still should get the negative that it got, because just clearly the things that you get out of the rewards from this, it's still awful. As someone who played FPS games and free-to-play games since I was 16, I can tell you that these things are just, I would say, almost shameful to even put into the bands of free-to-play, because the rewards are not even anything of remote value for a free-to-play player here. And this is one of the reasons I would just say, if you're getting into the game now, don't look at this and say, oh yeah, this is something that the play, you have to play. Don't bother with this, because half of these things, as a veteran, I'm gonna tell you that most of these things are gonna be worthless on your account in 1 to 2 years. Yeah, it's cool to have this funny little French guy, maybe, or I guess if you buy the premium pass, this guy, or maybe I think it's an American. I'm not good on geography, but yeah. But all these things, like these axes, like this tomahawk, the fancy shotgun, the rifles, this FNAB or mass, I guess, it's not gonna really be much for you in its whole at all. Of course you get some free goodies as well, but I would not suggest you play this if you're starting off now. With that said, the game mode you play for this, it's not original, it does not feel any remotely special, it just feels very rushed, and it does not really feel like it has any special thing to it. It feels almost like Enlisted just laid down everything and just said, screw it, we're not caring for the game anymore, we're done. And that's kind of how I felt for Enlisted for a long while now, due to the fact that we've not gotten any free content in soon to be half a year, except the very few things that we have got comparably from each side, which I would not call new content. It's more like a side grade of other content, I guess. So yeah, not to even note that the game that you play here has been in the game for years at this point, and the community already made it. So this is not really anything new. Alright. So this is one of the things that I wanted to note. So starting off with probably the now and here kind of thing. Now moving on to the more probably worse things we have to actually discuss in Enlisted. Okay, so one of the many things in Enlisted right now that as a veteran I can have experience for a very long time now is we have two almost completely segregated areas in the tech tree that are inherently different from each other, but at the same time the players are going to one or the other. We don't really have a specific area no more for a tech tree. The tech tree doesn't have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. You have tier 1 to 2 and then 3 to 5. And 3 to 5, I think we could just consider like the battle rating most people don't play, because either they don't reach that point in the tech tree, or they reach it and they don't want to play it no more because they don't find that part of the tech tree as enjoyable as the other part of the tech tree. And that's why when we go to research in virtually any tech tree, you will look at the tech tree and you will just boggle your mind and think, that's weird. A lot of the things here are very strange, right? Because you go through the tech tree and you look at this. You have 12 different things at tier 1, right? And those 12 things are, well, mediocre at best. And you boggle your mind and you're thinking like, why are people playing this tier? Same with tier 2. Tier 2 has, well, 2 SMGs, right? And they're not really anything special at all, really. You have for whatever reason, Gaijin chose to put a grenade launcher before a sniper class. Yeah, I don't know how that makes any sense, really. I think it would just better if that split off here and into the 99 early instead. And the type 99, I'm just gonna say it right here, this thing should be moved probably down to below the Arisaka 38, because this thing is not a upgrade. This thing is not an upgrade to the Arisaka 38. Arisaka 38 is reloads faster, it does virtually the same damage but has more DPS in general. And as for a bolt action, you don't need that extra damage if you just can reload your gun quicker. With that said, the Type 99 is not a whole lot better from the Type 9, this rifle, like the early and the late. These are basically the same gun, right? So then you reach also the point where you have LMGs, right? So now you wonder, well, why is there no LMGs in tier 1? Well, the Type 11 SMG I was about to say, isn't really that good. But when you reach the Type 97, it's actually so much better than the Type 11 that this thing carries you throughout the Japanese tech tree almost, I would say, to the point where you have the TG4 or the Type 100 or even Type 99. The Type 96, it's not good. It's not good at all. The KE7, it's barely an upgrade to the Type 96. It's almost like alike each other, right? It's in a weird spot in the tech tree, to be fair with you. Not even as a footnote, you are at a break line here, right? Between tier 2 and tier 3. This means that when you reach Type 96 KET7, the Type 99, you can now get into tier 4, and with that, tier 5. Because tier 5 ends up in the same tier as tier 4, because there's never enough people in tier 5 to go in to a full game for tier 5. So now you end up with people who have automatic weapons, and you end up with basically a bunch of semi-autos. And here is another very destructive thing, right? These semi-autos, the type high of these three, well, I can say it this way. Guess which one of these three are actually the best semi-auto in the tech tree? Well, on paper you would just probably say, right, the Type 4 must be the best gun because it's the furthest up in the tech tree, right? But statistically speaking, it's the worst of the three. The Type 4 actually is the worst of these three semi-autos. The Type Utsu has better actually aim down sight. Like, it actually has better aim down sight range than the Type 4. While the Type High actually has the better overall accuracy, DPS, range, and damage in, as I said, DPS. And it's easier to control as well. So now you have a tier 3 weapon that outcompetes two semi-autos, which these two semi-autos ends up in the same tier as the fully automatic weapons, such as the T20, the 1919 A6, the Hyde. I don't remember the numbers after the Hyde's now name, but whatever. And these guns are going to be facing the Type 4 and the Utsu, which on paper, that does not make a lot of sense, does it? A weapon that barely can deal with bolt actions, like gets outcompeted by bolt actions, is now facing a fully automatic weapon. Not even to even note this, right? These two, right? The Type 4 and the Type Utsu is strip-fed mag. You strip-feed both these guns, right? This needs to strip-feed twice. This is 10 bullets in this, right? And this gun has almost a half a minute reload for each mag. Well, it's 4 seconds on practice, but you know, it's a comical level of reloading, we could say. Right. So now you might think, yeah, well, that's okay, right? They can fix that. But we have actually so many other problems in the game right now that it's actually laughable how Lil Gaijin has gone out of their way to even think about this, right? Because, right, the Type High Auto and the Type 100, these are two guns in the game that, well, Type High is quite literally like the best automatic weapon in the game. It does not even have recoil. It's basically just a step up directly from the Type High, right? So it does not even have a negligible disappearance like in the tech tree. Like, it does not have a bad spot in the tech tree. It does not have any downsides. It does not really have any negative traits to it like the other rifles does. Because this thing has really good damage, really good range, really good stability when firing. It even has a 30 round mag. It's basically just a assault rifle with basically no downsides at all, right? The Type 100 is funny because they say it has 600 RPM, right? It's technically twice that. It has twice 600. But it's actually 1200 rounds because it has twice the barrel. It has 2 barrels, which makes this gun inherently powerful, right? And then you have the Type 4, which is also a double barrel gun, which this is kind of the funny part. It has twice the fire rate, actually, because this has 800, and that means it has 1600 RPM. This has 2 barrels, and this thing fires quicker than the Type 100 and is lower in the tech tree. Well, that's actually not only the problem in the Japanese tech tree. With everything considered here, on paper, right? Here we have probably the biggest flaw of the whole Japanese tech tree. Right. So, you have the Hori production and you have the Shiri. The Shiri 2. Right? These two, people would just flat out say, right, oh yeah, it's a bigger caliber gun, 120mm gun, or 105mm, yeah? You would just say, oh yeah, that's just clearly the best gun. But, and I say this, but you have not even considered the fact that 105mm technically just goes straight through everything in the game. It overpenetrates every vehicle in the game. That means that this thing is virtually useless as long as you don't have over 100mm of effective armor. So, the Shiri 2, in retrospect, is actually so many times better, because not only do you get a turret, you get a 75 gun, which can actually have like extreme spall. Like, if you hit something, that thing is just gone, without a doubt, right? And this conception here makes no sense, because these two vehicles, the Shiri and the Hori, these two don't make sense, because these should change place. This thing is clearly more powerful than this. Well, on paper, like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't, for someone like who's been playing the game for this long, myself, I wouldn't see this as a problem, but for a new player, this would be a confusion. Because, like, what, you get with 2000 more XP for grinding this? That's insane for a Hori production, and they would never consider like, yeah, this thing might be just better because like, you know, it's a bigger vehicle with bigger gun. You know, they don't think about the nooks and crannies and all that. So this is just gonna be confusing for new players, right? Off topic. All right. So now we have even more things in the tech tree, right? That I would almost consider just ludicrous, right? At the helm of all things, I would say we need just really reconsider is the Shiha shotgun. This thing doesn't even have AP in this game, right? That means I can't even deal with the Shermans. And Shermans, as it's at tier 3, this thing can't even do anything at tier 3. Like, yeah, people are gonna say, oh yeah, you can use it to kill infantry, you just nuke infantry with it. Well, how HG works in Enlisted right now, where it has like a gamble of 30% is gonna hit and it's gonna just obliterate everything it hits, or it's gonna be like a 60 to 70% chance that bullet is just not gonna do anything at all and the enemy is just gonna flinch a bit and then walk away like nothing happened. That's like such a high chance these days that it's almost crazy. And this just does not make sense where it is in the tech tree right now. I think this should probably be fitting into somewhere here instead, between the Ho 1 and Rini 1. This would be clearly the better spot for this vehicle, because at tier 2 this would actually make more sense with the turret traverse and everything. And to be frank, seeing this appear at its tier where it is right now, most people doesn't even use this thing at all, because everyone just go for the Shinu instead, because it's just way better, or the Honi 3. Like, yeah, that's just on paper makes no sense to use this at all. So, right, that out of the picture right now. So now we're on to the next thing in the Japanese tech tree, because as if the Japanese doesn't have it painful enough. I don't know, Gaijin, what you've been doing at the office, but I don't know why you put a open top vehicle at tier 4, and especially making that open top vehicle only a gun carrier, where the next coming vehicle behind it is actually a oscillating turret with the same gun at the same tier. The NATO should probably sit somewhere in tier 3 after the Honi 3, if anything. That would make more sense because, well, 75 and 75 both have a 75 gun. And this thing is bigger, which in practice makes this just a bigger target. This is nothing but just a big can of meat. That's what it is. And these open top vehicles, they rarely see any use, because simply put, at a tier where it's like a tier 4, 5, you see so much bombs, rockets and grenades and demo packs and all sorts of things. Nobody uses them. Let alone like auto rifles where they just jump up and shoot you. RPGs, M9 bazookas, like everything like that. So this tech tree right here just does not make sense on paper at all. And this is why, we will come to this later, I will just have to come through with this and say it. This rant is gonna be a very long rant about Enlisted, how it, mechanically speaking, is a flaw. Well, we're on to the next thing then. I can't speak much for aircraft, but I'm sure that you guys can leave something in the comments, and if that be, I'll add something to the video later on. So, we can just technically move on to the next thing, right? Which is, I think is actually hilarious in the game so far, right? So, this is the thing, right? You are in the Russian territory. You're grinding, and you're thinking, yeah, right. So, a player who is brand new to the game, you're probably sitting and thinking, well, I can unlock the PPS 42, but what's the point of getting the PPS 42 if I just grind the squad and then get the PPS 43 right away? Well, even as a veteran in the modern tech tree, does not on paper make sense for me either, because the PPS 42 is just a neglected little brother to the PPS 43. Back in the day when we used to have the tech tree specific thing, they were used to be more separated. There used to be a bigger gap between when you got them, but here it's just like right after another, which inherently makes it so this thing is obsolescent right away the moment you've grinded this thing, which leaves no reason to grind the PPS 42 at all. Like, there's no reason to pick the PPS 42 whatsoever over the 43. With all the things said, right, the PPS 43 isn't even as remotely bad with that problem you have there as this, right? Okay, so you're just grinding through the tech tree, right? And you're going across the tech tree and you just, grinding, and you just come across this, right? You get the Winchester 1895 here, and then you get the SVT 38. Well, the most poetic part about this, right? There's a big dilemma in Enlisted right now, which is bolt actions has been for the longest time almost perpetually better than most semi-automatics since a long time back. I can't even remember how long it is now, but it's a long time. And the reason is why the Winchester 1895, is so much better than the SVT 38, which is even in the only semi-auto in tier 3 and rifle in tier 3, is because this is way more accurate, thus instantly kills the target you hit, and almost has virtually no downsides compared to the SVT 38. While this just insta kills and also one shot, and I said one shot instant like twice, but basically it has the same reload rate, instantly kills the target, and gives virtually no, like the SVT 48 gives no beneficiaries over the 1895. So grinding this does not make sense on paper. And I don't even know why there's an SVT 48 sniper, as this thing is the most inaccurate thing in the whole game. Like the most inaccurate semi-auto in the game. And this is why when you grind the game, don't just ever consider using the 1895 until you get the SVT40. I'm just gonna say that right now. That's one of the very few instances in the game I would just flat out say, just don't even get the SVT38. Don't even, just ignore it. Right? So, now we're on to the part in the Russian tech tree where I'm just wondering, like, what Gaijin really thought. Really. Like, unironically, I have no idea what Gaijin thought, right? It feels... I'm oblivious to what Gaijin ever considered what this was meant to be. But here we are, I guess. In Tier 5 for Russia, for whatever reason, you have the AVS and the AVT, which, I mean, how do I put this in a nice way to not get absolutely dunked on for YouTube? This is a very questionable decision. I think that's the nicest way I can say it. As I would almost consider myself that the AVS, for me, in almost every instance, is just better for me. As this has a higher likeliness of one-shot hitting, and if you get good with recoil control, this is just gonna slaughter enemies, right? It does not matter, right? If you can control the recoil of the AVS, the beast, as I like to call it, this thing slaughters like nothing. And for the AVT to be right after with 12.7 damage, a downgrade, by the way, which, well, sure, necessarily doesn't always mean it's bad, but just looking at statistically speaking, it's just a downgrade. You have one less vertical recoil, and that's about it. You have a little bit more horizontal recoil as well, which is weird, considering the fact, like, why would you have that on a higher level weapon? Speaking of which, I don't know why Gaijin chose that, giving it the AVS 13.2 when the AVS get 12.7. They both sit with the same fire rate at the same level, yet the AVS is almost like 9 out of 10 times gonna be always better if you know how to handle recoil. So this is a dilemma I will always wonder what Gaijin was thinking, but yeah, it's beyond me. This is just one of the very many strange design choices, I think, for this tech tree that they chose to do, and one of the reasons probably I won't keep grinding Enlisted as much as I do in these days is reasons like these. Well, moving along is the one out weird that I think, I mean, it's the elephant in the room, right? That I think everyone here is just staring at in the middle of their screen right now. It's the PPD-40. And you might wonder, like, yeah, what do you mean, Voxic? The PPD-40 isn't bad. It's 900 RPM. No, it's not a bad gun. That's not the problem here. The problem is, you see, this thing at the time was virtually like taken out of order completely. When you have weapons like the AS-44, the Fedorov Automat, the PPSH-41, and all these guns, right? The AVT-40, the AS-44, and the PPSH, and the RD-44, all these guns, right? They were specifically ordered to be cheaply produced. The AVT-40 is a conversion package of the already existing SVT-40s. The PPSH is an upgrade from the PPD-40, which is already it's basically a stamped metal weapon, basically just designed straight from the PPD-40, which had so many problems. That's why the reason they made the PPSH-41, because it had better reliability. And with that said, I don't even know why the Fedorov Automat is at this tier it is, to be even honest, and why it has so much damage and why it is at the range it is right now, and how powerful it is. Because this thing is a World War I weapon. This thing, like, I don't know why they chose to put the Fedorov at this BR with the damage it has and everything. This thing would be more suited somewhere in, probably in tier 2, to be absolutely honest, because this is cold, like, this is cold stock war weapons that they pulled out, like when they had weapon shortages from World War I. And to be absolutely honest, it makes no sense to me why such a late weapon to World War I would be introduced in a World War II game where it's at the end of a World War II game. That makes virtually no sense. With that said, it does not make any sense whatsoever with the AS-44. I've never even heard of this weapon, by the way. I cannot speak for this gun, because this is some cryptic secret document, straight up gun, that I have no idea where it came from. I have never in my life seen this thing. And just as the Type High Automatic, I don't know where they've gotten this information from, because I searched the whole web. I just only found one single instance of the Type High Automatic, and that was by a potential that it was a conversion kit, and it had so many manufacturing problems that they just opted it out. Right? So, right. Most of it we could just consider already that probably was not even in the real world at all. They did not even make it, and probably didn't even exist to begin with. I assume it's something like the AS-44 in the same sense. I don't know. Same with the Maxim Tokarev though, is that this is just a World War I machine gun. And I'm gonna label it the same for the Fedorov Automat. For authenticity, I think this thing should just be moved down and put like a tier 2 with less damage, less capabilities, and all that fancy stuff out the window, and just have the RD-44 just blast straight through. Because the RD-44 at the end of the tech tree makes gradually more sense than having a Maxim Tokarev from World War I as the end weapon. That just does not make any sense on paper whatsoever. So, yeah. Now I want to actually go over a few other things that I think we really need to talk about, and that is the amount of things that are actually pay-gated in Enlisted that would honestly need straight up just be removed. I don't mean in the pay-gated way of, oh yeah, this is some fancy version of something else, that's why it's pay-gated. No, it's mostly pay-gated stuff that actually are so like absurd that I think it should just be removed from the pay-gating because it's just that good. One of the things that are pay-gated that is so good is actually the M3A1, which is the, well, I can't show that right now. I think, oh yeah, maybe like this. Yeah, it's the M3 half track, the American half track, by the way, for Russia. And this thing, I don't even know why this is for Russia. This is kind of strange to me that this thing is for Russia, as this technically should, I mean, I know that the Americans had some Lend-Lease stuff, but that's just about it, right? And this should not really be pay-gated, even if it is a basically basically a Lend-Lease vehicle, because I think most players should have access to this. It should not be pay-gated to have an APC with a gun on it, because most people just don't even bring APCs into the game right now due to the fact that it's just, the truck is just so vulnerable that the slightest mistake they just explode. And I mean, it gives you more XP, but it doesn't give good morale for the whole team. Well, that's one of the things I would like to address. But another is to just, like, if we go here, right, to Germany, you have so many paid things in the German tech tree that either it's just beyond crazy strong, or it's just like a thing that already exists in the tech tree, that it's just like a paid version of the tech tree weapon. And half of these things could just be flat out removed and made a skin for those characters, or given such weapon as a reward for doing something, as a potential buying capability for it. So say you ranked up your squad to, like, say rank 10, right? And at rank 10, after that you're starting to grind towards XP for a like a fancy new weapon, right? So if you keep playing with that gun or that class, you are working towards a skin or a weapon or a, like, basically like War Thunder, right? And that's one thing I think a lot of the veterans of Enlisted would appreciate. Like, something to at least have something to constantly work towards, instead of just having dumb null 0 XP going nowhere virtually for the squads. Because when you're done grinding a squad, you just dismiss them more or less. Because, I mean, the only reason you ever use them otherwise is just to fill a full stack, which is like, what, 3 SMG squads, 3 tank, like 3 rifle squads, 3 engineer squads, you name it. And yeah, outside of that, it's quite frankly no reason to just not just dumping them afterwards. So that quite frankly is what happens a lot of the time, sadly. And this is a thing I wanted always to note about Germany. And that is, we have a buttload of German equipment and gear and stuff that just feels... It feels like there's just too much German gear. There's too much German gear that just does not really serve any proper purpose and just is in the way for the player, I think. Because, right, looking at the German tech tree, you have what? 1, you have 2, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 bolt actions at tier 1. And that is without the snipers, which is 6 and 7. 7 bolt actions at tier 1, which is kind of hilarious if you think about it. And then you have the MP28, MP34, Beretta M38. All these 3 are at tier 1. And here's the weirdest like conception, right? Is that, right, looking past all this, you keep going to the car war, like pre-war car 98, right after, to I think it's a Italian, to a French rifle. Why does the... I mean, I get, like, if Germany captured a bunch of French rifles, I get that. But why is a French rifle in the normal tech tree, and why is that not a premium gun? Because the Moss, if anything, instead of the Beretta M38 down here, that the Moss should be there. Clearly. Because how does it make to have a Moss sense to have a Moss in a tech tree where everything is German, Italian, or, well, Hungarian maybe, probably, and a few other nations. This is an allied weapon technically. But also, like, there's so much other things, right? The VG-15, this is a weapon that was used in the end war, like the civil troops for Germany used this thing. And I don't know why it's sitting in here. Oh, there's an Austrian gun here as well, I forgot. But like, why is this considered a rifle when this technically is a semi-auto STG? This is like more an assault rifle than a rifle. Well, now we're gonna move along to something that's I find just quite hilarious actually. Is that right? So here I think here I think actually Gaijin did something right. So the MP38 and the Beretta M1, these two, yeah, I would say the M38 like is actually probably weaker than the M1, right? These two, this makes sense. This makes actually completely sense into the M40 or MP40, right? These makes sense. This right here makes sense. This is how you should have done things, Gaijin, right? Except if you look past about this, right? That this here makes absolutely sense, right? But then you move on to further. This is where nothing makes sense at all, right? So all of a sudden we have a CK383, right? You're gonna look at the stats and think like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That looks pretty good, right? The gun looks pretty good. Well, the horrible sights on this, with it's very much gimmick where it has to almost be placed on the ground for it to fire as a SMG, and the awful recoil pattern it has, this does not work as well as the MP40. This controls like a person sitting on a mule that's kicking all the time while trying to aim for a pole at 500 meters, while this is like aiming at a pole with a laser pointer. Does that make any logical sense? So right after that, you then get a flat up downgrade from the CK383. You only get slightly more damage to the trade of what, 700 RPM? And here comes the like absolutely mind-boggling thing, right? You go from the MP35-1 to M38, which is less fire rate again. So now we're down to 500 RPM. We are basically in the same territory as the MP40. So we've gone from 700 to 540 to 500 and now back up to 600 again. This in logic makes no sense. This build here does not make sense at all. You might as well just put the MP35, the CK38 and the Beretta M38 somewhere like after the Beretta M1. So in here, probably like the CK at the end of the MP40, the MP35 like right in front of the M1, the M38 like between the MP35 and the M38 should be somewhere like right before the CK38. That's how it should be done, because fire rate is virtually all that will matter, and fire controllability and stability, nothing else. Damage is almost completely a number, but at the same time you have to consider if a gun is controllable enough, it's gonna almost equal out as much to damage. The MP40 is the most controllable gun out of these guns, out of all these 4 guns. This doesn't compare to the MP40. The MP45 has worse controllability and fire rate. This has overall less fire rate and does not fire rate, but has worse controllability than this, less damage, and overall has just overall a worse figure and worse aim down sight. Beretta M38 is the thing which actually break the hard ice of actually competing with the MP40, which I would almost consider putting this after the MP40. The M38 actually is just that good compared to the MP40. It's 100 more like RPM, more fire stability, it has better overall controllability, it just works better in general, and it has 40 rounds. So this right here is just a flawed tech tree right here. Well, moving on to the next bit of the video, and I'd like to just contemplate like how do I even put this into words. Actually, I don't know how to put this into words, but how did you think here, Gaijin? Like, cause right, Kirelli M38 or 39, sorry. Kirelli M39 has a 6.6 hit power, by the way, and has SMG damage at range and sits at 5.5. This is basically a Tommy gun, but a worse Tommy gun with worse recoil control, worse range, and overall just everything worse than a Tommy gun ever would do. So going from this to an MKB42 to an MP43 to an STG44, all in the same tier, why would you ever use the Kirelli 39M? This gun is the odd one out at this BR. This gun nobody's gonna use because it's just in such an awkward spot. This would almost be better where the Beretta M38 is right now, because that will fill the gap of this BR4, where you just have quite frankly ludicrously bad guns compared to what you get at tier 5. Better yet, moving it down even further, probably where even before tier 4 or even tier 3. Because like I think everything that has a cartridge of 9 should be probably moved downwards. The MP40 and the MP38. The MP38 is just a overall dumbed down version of the MP40 in retrospect. So at the same time, I think people overestimate these guns because a lot of the people use them are exceptionally well at using them, while at the same time they are really good in the hands of someone who can use them. I think these guns, they never get any love, because these guns are just, they get overshadowed by the MP40, by the better players. Because the ZK383 gets outcompeted because it has less, this has better visibility while firing repeatedly. The MP35 has less fire rate and less capability of hitting multiple targets and accuracy. Beretta M38 is just a dumbed down version of the MP35, so it's just gonna end up being a very stale and awkward place where this gun is almost gonna always just be outbought for this gun. And then you have the M38, where this thing is just gonna be absolutely duked on. The M38 is just gonna duke on the M38 like 42, because the 40 rounder is just so much better than the M38 42. Well, the next thing I think I want to talk about, right, is the LMGs here is actually completely fine. I would say you've done a fair job on it. I'm not gonna say good, I'm gonna say a fair bit on it. Okay, so Gaijin, Can we talk about how you put one semi-automatic at tier 2? Actually VG115 as well, but we are not gonna talk about that because that thing is just an SMG with semi-auto paint. And this thing, I don't know what went through your veins when you made this, but this is gonna overshadow the VG2. I don't know what you were thinking here, but of course everyone will use the semi-auto here with 11.3 damage for a mediocre at best bolt action. This is the end of a tech tree, while this is the beginning of tier 3. Hell, I would say the Armadillo actually is way better than the M41. Because this has garbage tier reload rate, and this thing has awful accuracy. There's nothing positive about this gun, really. This thing is just bad. Like, competitively speaking, you never choose this gun. And this thing just does everything the G41 wants to be, but better. Almost in every single area, it does it better. The G43, on the other hand, this is a not even strip fed, and it's literally a magazine fed semi-auto, and it's just gonna outcompete the G41 and the Armadillo 39, which this is fine at tier 4. This is completely fine. What's not fine though is the ZH29. This thing does not belong here. This thing gets duped on. This has no point of being here. With 108 horizontal recoil, with almost the same damage, and still just not doing anything of remote value compared to the G43, this thing just gets duked on. This thing does not fit in its place where it is right now, and this really needs to be addressed. Same with almost every tech tree at tier 4. Tier 4 should not have semi-automatics if they get into tier 5. They should be stuffed somewhere in tier 3, and here probably place some form of, probably this GPP or GGP40 or the, what is it called now? This car with a grenade launcher, and they should be here instead. Because that's gonna come in way more handy for the average player who's gonna be facing up against the tier 5. Until they can get the FG42. Because like newer players are gonna see more utility in dealing with tanks and large quantities of infantry. That's where you start seeing these things at this BR. And as an early rifleman, you're gonna see more use for that here than anywhere. Not even to note that I think most people are gonna tell me now, like, yeah, that's gonna get ultra toxic where everyone's just spam grenade launchers. But you also have to consider then, you're doing virtually the same thing with just automatic weapons. That just only gives them a chance to fight back at automatic weapons, and then again, they have a very long reload time to even like hit you again with that, and there's like a 50-50 chance that they don't even kill you, or that you even have like the perk where you just don't die by even getting hit by grenades or bombs. So like just giving a player a bolt action with a grenade launcher on here, I think most early on players would not even complain getting it here and having that replace these two weapons, because these two weapons right here, they have no place in the game at the moment. The Series 29 I would even put like here or here. The G43 probably would be either at the end here or here. I would almost go just tell it here because it's just behind the G41. Then again, I'd just reiterate that might be just a option and not anything entitled to be so. But moving on is that I think here, this is something that we really need to address, right, Gaijin? We really need to address this right here and right now. This and this, these two guns should not be here. The MKB-42 and the MKB-42H, these two weapons will never see the light of day in the game. Because people are gonna grind, they see this gun, you don't even need a squad for this, right? You don't need even the squad for the next weapon here. Meaning that you get this, you don't ever get the gun, and you just move on to the MP43 because then you get the squad and then you get the STG-44. And by the way, I don't know how this makes any sense, by the way, but because you unlock the MKB sniper not by the MKB-42 but with the FG-42. I don't know how that makes sense at all, really. But then again, yet another weird thing I think is that why would you put the FG-42, okay, the normal FG-42 next to the FG-42-2 when the FG-42-2 is just gonna always be used over the FG-42? Nobody ever uses the FG-40 for normal FG-42 now, because simply put, well, this thing does not really work as well as this. And why wouldn't you just grind with the the G43 or even yet this thing, Armagello, at low tier to just unlock the FG42 too then? I mean, the silence speaks for itself here, and I think the best way of saying this would be to just, this needs to be looked at, Gaijin, because currently the player base, what is going on in the player base is we have two segregated communities, where we have one that just plays top tier, which is like a player base which only plays for competitive reasons, or plays with heavy vehicles. And you have another community that sits at low tier, seed clubbing, just killing noobs, which ends up being very bad for the game's longevity, because the average new player is not willing to stay in the game for longer, because they just end up being fought with like the highest tier, low tier stuff, with their dudes being maxed out with equipment, gear and all sorts of things, and they can't do fuck all about it. They get absolutely shafted and they can't do anything about that, because they just have low tier stuff, they have unranked equipment, unranked guys, they can't do really anything, they don't have engineers, they virtually can't do anything. And they just get stomped on by these veterans who are fed up with the game and ends up in the bottom tier, where they just seal club people. And that stops Enlisted from becoming a bigger game. And that's one of the very many reasons why we have a dying community. So I think I made a lot of my points clear here with just, I don't think we need to go over the US tech tree because it virtually applies the same logic where you have most of the weird weapons at the end which just does not fit in the characteristics for the guns at all. At least there's only a handful of semi-autos at this tier and so on and so forth here, but yeah. One thing I can note here at the US tech tree, we have 4 Tommy guns, including this one, but nobody really uses any of these. Because the M21 is which everyone uses because it has the best sight. And we can just, I don't need to say more than that. But take it or leave it, Gaijin. I'm just gonna say it here. Right on the flat head on the screw. That's the problem with the Tommy gun in the game right now. And if you could fix that, that'd be grand. Same with the M1 Garand here. And here. And probably the M2 carbine. If there's some way you can make that way better, that would make the US player base way more happy, I think. If you could just fix this. Well, the M1 Garand is not too harsh on it, but this, and this. All the ring sight guns, they need some addressing. Because how it is right now is just terrible, quite frankly. Well, as I said, I think I made my point. I already dragged this video out to over an hour. I think that's way enough of time for someone to understand how perplexed the problems are with this game. So, yeah. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Catch you later.